Hello, Namaste. I'm Sanjeep Neupane from Kabra district of Nepal. I'm a member of Nepal Youth Network for Sustainable Development, and I am also associated with ARD, one of the local partner of TDS German. Today on this development and its alternative seminar, I'm going to talk about radical ecological democracy. First of all, I would like to thank TDS and organizer for this golden opportunity. In the beginning, I will talk about the current development practices in the region. It is more or less similar to Nepal, India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. Most of our development model are unplanned, unscientific, and unsustainable. There is haphazard settlement and urbanization. There is no rural and urban planning. Only physical development are prioritized and is highly mechanized. Many people think that huge buildings, big roads, and tall towers are only the indicator of development, which is not true. Countries of South Asia like Nepal, Pakistan, India, Afghanistan lies in Himalayan region, and due to the use of heavy machine and equipment like bulldozers, many parts of these countries are vulnerable to disaster like flood, landslide, and soil erosion. Many settlements near mountain region are at high risk of glacier outbursts. Our development is production-oriented and consumer-centric. Marginalized people, communities, and indigenous people have less access to development and its benefit. So this has increased gap between poor and rich, which ultimately increase the social inequality. Limited local culture, recognition, and local knowledge and values have been overlooked. Limited people have control on resources in the community. Marginalized people's meaningful participation is not ensured in decision-making forum. Resources are limited, but demand are unlimited. So this has caused unequal distribution of the resources and conflict among people. Environmental degradation and loss of biodiversity due to the deforestation, landslide, flood, forest fire are increasing day by day. Now, I move on the radical ecological democracy. It is a framework of democratic and sustainable approach where community people, including youth, holding rights in political decision-making and planning process. This ensures environmental justice, prosperity, and social cultural equity. This ensures environment justice, prosperity, and social inequality too. Intergeneration equity and sharing of responsibility with good governance practices will be highly recommended. Now, I want to say the few learning from the grassroots practices. Many countries have their own practices on South Asia and few similarities. Local and traditional knowledge and practices of democratic system. Community forests have their own local laws and policy. So they are managed by community people. Ethnic community like Chepang, Rautes, Tharus have follow their leaders and make the rules. They are managed by the community people. Local communities have their own rules and regulations made by themselves. They elect their own leader and everybody follow the leader and rules. So federal and local government do not influence at the local level. Similarly, we have another interesting example of ecological democracy. People at community level, they have constructed conservation pond, which helps in water recharge system. The water channeling through canals is done with their own rules at local level as a democratic practice. Conservation practices are part of culture and rituals in some of the indigenous people. For an example, Chepang community share Indian butter plant called chiuris tree in Nepali as a gift in wedding. Pond and platform, locally called chautar, is platform with plantation of religious tree like Bor, People, Sami, Lakuri. As it has religious and cultural relevance. Moreover, it helps to conserve water and habitat for birds. Likewise, construction of holes in houses for bird nesting, ponds for cattle oiling, and water recharging, rainwater harvesting system. There is a promotion of next. There is a promotion of local knowledge and practices like improved water mills for grinding and biogas for cooking and lighting. Monitoring of water sources and water distribution for irrigation and drinking is managed by communities by democratic practices. Organic manure and farming traditional practices for seed and grain. There is a tradition of labor and good exchange, locally called oicho poicho, and share their best seed to their neighborhood. There is agriculture calendar, transhumance system of yak and sheep farming, plantation and tree harvesting following season. Seed protection and distribution, the neighborhood and relatives promoting mixed crops and rather than monoculture practices, zero tillage practices. Promotion of local agriculture, seeds, culture, and practices and values. Few local government have practices of manually constructing the road without machines, and they follow the sustainable development. Now we can see some picture of our good practice. Youth participating in construction chautaris and water mill system. We can see on the first picture, youths are making the chautaris by the local resources, and second one is of water mill where people used to go for grinding. It's one of the best example of the eco-friendly tradition and development. Next. And conservation port and water recharge system constructed by community participation. You can see on the figure, these were constructed by the elected people of the communities by using their local resources. And second one is of rainwater harvesting. Second last one is of water canals. Water was brought on the water channeling for the irrigation purpose. And the last one is of people of the community discuss on the community with their democratic practices. Now, I want to move why the radical ecological democracy for the youth. We can play an important role in ecological democracy. We believe in youth that they are positive change maker. They can make meaningful impacts in communities. Youth and children are more vulnerable to the degraded environment, so they should be sensitized and protected. They can play a key role in raising awareness and behavioral change. Conservation education and practices can be promoted through the mobilization of young people. Youth can change their voice in policy making level and can contribute in planning process. Youth can work as a watchdog in the community. They can monitor the development project and can ensure the environmental sustainability. Sensitization of local leader and policymaker for environment and social harmony. Youth can lobby and can help in resource allocation for the ecological agendas. Youth can themselves be elected or have their meaningful participation in the political forum, and they can do political decision for ecological democracy. Myself as environmental campaigner and youth leader, I have been leading various environmental campaigns and contribute on water recharge system, plastic-free communities and displacement of pollution-free bricks factory. Run the campaign like My Planet, My Rights, Friday for Future, localization of sustainable development goals, and formulation and implementation of environment-friendly policies, community awareness, and the policy change. During my tenure in Youth Parliament as a Youth Prime Minister, I have raised the agenda of environmental policy, resource allocation for environmental protection during physical infrastructure development. Now, as a youth, we have a vision where the society have eco-friendly local policy from local to national, and its effective implementation for ecological democracy. Sustainable development where ecological, social, and economical harmony exist. Eco-friendly local policies from local to national level and its effective implementation. Recognition and realization of diversity of communities and biodiversities. Society where ecological rights of people is ensured through the meaningful participation and the leadership of the youth. We believe in institutional development and active youth engagement in mainstreaming of development with the good governance practices and promotion of local knowledge, skills, and practices. As a vision, youth network from local to international level should be formed for ecological democracy. Finally, we extend our solidarity to the ecological democracy. Thank you. And I am happy to answer if there are any queries.
Ganz herzlichen Dank, Sanjeep, für deine Ausführungen.
Thank you very much, Sanjeep, for your explanations, for your presentation. We'll have a look whether there are some questions that came in. Just in order to keep the debate alive, we just would say if just questions concerning the understanding, if something was not clear, and at the end, after Ashish and Shrishti also made their presentation, we will have a common discussion together. So there is one question for you, Sanjeep, so far.
Yes.
Just let me read it. It's an English question, so that is easier for you.
Is the dugout water harvesting tank not too open and can easily drown roaming animals? Perhaps they could mount some wooden rails around it to guard it from animals. Das war eine Verständnisfrage tatsächlich die Struktur des Wassertankes.
That was a question for the understanding about the construction of that water pond. And a second question that I would like to add is how is the process of participation of youth organized? So these would be two first questions for Sanjeep, for you.
Can you repeat the first question? I've not heard properly.
Die erste Frage.
The first question was because of that water tank, about the pond. It's a technical question, in fact. Isn't the construction too open? Isn't there the possibility of animals falling into the pond or other problems that come up with that pond?
Thank you for this question. The picture that we have shown on the figure is undergoing the construction water pond, and this water pond were covered by the chains, and so that easily the animal and the other, even the children cannot access to those areas. They were conserved by the bioengineering, by using a plant around there. And the next one, after how youth participation participate process of activities. That means youth can participate on the local planning process. There's a youth network on local level to provincial and provincial level to national level, and they can actively participate in local planning process. And we have the National Youth Policy, National Youth Council, and Ministry of Youth, and we have 3 layers of government, so that youth can directly participate on local planning process.
Thanks a lot.
And the,
möchtest du noch an dieser Frage noch was dazu sagen, Sanjeep?
And the people,
would you like to comment? Yeah. Okay.
Once again.
Meine Frage war, warst du schon mit der Antwort durch oder möchtest du
was that all you wanted to answer to that question, or did you want to add something?
Yeah, and I want to add something, that there's a question of concept of radical ecological democracy face in India. Yes, India and Nepal has some similarities of the geography. That they are main facing the problem of landslide, flood, deforestation, and the
Sanjeep.
At first, we respect. We first we respect the nature, and then only for the human beings.
Sanjeep, du musst
den
Chat.
Sanjeep, you do not have to watch the chat. I ask the questions directly. Don't focus on the chat. You can stay with me because I ask you directly.
Okay.
Another question which is very exciting is do young people in traditional ways of life no chance to get a voice or being heard in traditional ways?
Yes, used from the communities, more or less they engage on those traditional concepts also, because our part is a very semi-urban and semi village area. So our lifestyle is on the alternative development model, because we have a good practices of those alternative development as shown in the figure.
Jetzt eine sehr tiefgreifende Frage, Sanjeep.
A deep question. Thank you for your presentation, dear Sanjeep. Do you see that all people can? Do you consider the rights of nature as such, or do you think humans have a right over nature?
First of all, nature first, and then only the human.
Das habe ich jetzt nicht verstanden, Sanjeep.
I did not understand that, Sanjeep. Can you repeat it, please?
yeah, we'll first give priority to the nature, and then only the human beings.
Okay, habe ich verstanden. Wunderbar.
Thank you. Now I got it. Thank you.
Wie ist nächste Frage? Wie ist der Rahmen dieser, der indigene Rahmen der...
What's the indigenous framework of youth participation? How did that come about? The participation of young people in a community and the networking. And the question is, did Terre des Hommes make a contribution in order to drive this idea?
Because we have a 3 layer of government on Nepal, federal, provincial, and the local level, and there's youth can participate in local planning process, and there's a youth network on every local units. So they can be included on the process, and the government has started the participation of youths on the federal youth parliament, and the many youths from the all over the country have took part on those national level program and shared their ideas and raised the voice on sustainable development and formation and implementation of environment friendly policies, awareness, and they have a strong advocacy on the policy change and for bringing on the mainstreaming for youth on mainstreaming of the politics as well as the community.
Noch eine weitere Frage zum politischen Rahmen dieser Jugend.
And another question on the political framework of youth participation. We talked about it in different aspects, but
die Person, die die Frage stellt, ich sehe jetzt den Namen gerade nicht, ist ja auch nicht.
I cannot see the name of the person asking, but is saying thank you for your insightful presentation. And the question is if these practices of maintenance of national institutions, are they spread far or are they supported? And can you talk about the national policies on environmental protection in Nepal?
Nepal is as a countryside of is implementing the environment friendly policies and is the country of which have started and follow the sustainable development goals by 2030, and the country has made the environment friendly policies from national level to provincial and on the local level too, and every local level have environment friendly policies. Then they have make the local environment friendly policies, and then they have their own the campaign by the government side as well as and from the civil society organization also, localization of sustainable development and implementation of environment friendly policies, and they do a community awareness and lobby on the resource allocation for the ecological agendas.
Wunderbar, herzlichen Dank, Sanjeep.
Thank you very much, Sanjeep. So we have a discussion which is a little bit longer because we are waiting for Ashish to come back, and for the time being it does not make sense to stop asking Sanjeep questions. So still there are some more questions waiting for you. So and then hopefully Ashish and Shrishti are join us again with power for their battery. So two important points. Stefan Hoffmann asks the question. No, it's Alexander Käfer. He asks how big and how far spread is the movement that has the concept of a radical ecological democracy. Is it a small group or are there any significant networks? So what does the situation look like in that perspective in Nepal?
It is quite a new term on India and Nepal too, but they are trying to do, and they have willing to work on the alternative development model, and they are willing to and have their development under the alternative model. They want to do, because it's by this COVID also, it's more relevant that the alternative development is more important for the betterment of the, and to live in the green and the clean environment.
Herzlichen Dank, Sanjeep. Eine Frage, die ein bisschen in eine andere Richtung.
Thank you, Sanjeep. Then we have a question going into another direction. What about the role of girls and young women in the networking of these youth initiatives?
Can you repeat once again?
The question on the participation of girls and young women, participation of women in the youth movement. What is the situation like?
Thank you for this wonderful question. And I can happily share this, our historic practices that we have guaranteed, and our youth policy and of youth network has guided that there must be a 50-50 participation on every network. There is a 50% boys and 50% girls on every network, and it's guaranteed by our policies also. And so there is no remarks to be that every boys and girls have equal participation on those networks. And
wunderbar, ist doch eine gute Perspektive.
That's a great perspective. Thank you. Alexander Horstmann asked a question. Also, he says, thank you for your presentation, Sanjeep. And question is about rights and autonomy in decision-making on a local level that might be decisive. So what about education, training on a local level? That is the first question. And the second question is, what's the level of participation? And another question is, how about threats by powerful elites or the mafia even, with respect to resources?
Yeah, I have already mentioned that there is a limited resources and there is unlimited people's control, and people are trying to control the resources. But by the democratic process and the people's participation, they will move. Mafias will move on every part of the world. But the process of the democratic process, because and the participation process. When the people are willing to ask the question and they move to the transparency and the good governments, the mafias will automatically go back.
Und zum Fragen der Ressourcenkonflikte und den Bedrohungen.
On conflicts of resources and on threats of elites or mafia. We see young people organizing everywhere with future-oriented initiatives that they start, but then there are interests of local powers, elites, or criminal organizations like structures like the mafia. It's about conflicts of resources. So what about that confrontation from your perspective in Nepal?
I can understand. Can you repeat what you have said?
Ja, ja, die Frage nach
question on conflicts about resources. As you said, participation of young people and opening perspectives in life and change, but then there is local interests that are conflicting, and then there are interests of conflicts of interests with local elites. Is that true for Nepal? What's the situation like?
Our Nepal is now it's Nepal is going to move on the infrastructure development so that there will be the use of natural resources. Till now, there is no any so much big conflict. There is some conflict, but was managed by the locally elected bodies from the local level to provincial and the federal government. So there has not so much conflict till now, but on future there will be conflict. So the government have formed the different structure to discuss about people's conflict on the federal system, because we have a 3 year of government on the Nepal. So the government have established a constitutional commission to manage the conflict in Nepal. So
ganz herzlichen Dank, Sanjeep. Vielen Dank für deine Ausführungen.
Thank you very much, Sanjeep. Thank you for all the explanations, the answers to the questions.
Thank you so much.
In.